He was finally free. Free to see his daughter after years behind bars. But what he found waiting for him at home wasn't the happy reunion he dreamed of. His little girl, his Emma. Her arms told a story no parent should ever have to see. Bruises, marks, signs of pain. And the question that would haunt him forever, who could do this to my child? In the next few minutes, you're about to witness a story of love, courage, and the shocking reality of prejudice. This isn't just a story about one family. It's a story about the invisible battles happening every day, and the lengths one father will go to protect the one he loves most. Samuel hadn't seen his daughter in years. Prison walls had kept him from her laugh, her tiny hands, her innocent smile. But now, after long months of counting days and nights, he was finally free.
Free to go home.
Free to hold her. Free to be the father he had promised he would be. But the moment he stepped into the house, a cold knot formed in his chest. Something wasn't right. The air felt heavier than he remembered, thick with tension and silence. Rachel, his ex-partner, gave him a nervous smile, her eyes flicking toward Emma. "She's just in her room," she said softly, avoiding his gaze. Samuel's heart pounded as he climbed the stairs. Each step echoed like a warning, and then he saw her. Emma, his little girl, standing by the window, her tiny shoulders trembling, her gaze fixed on the floor. He smiled, trying to hide the nervous flutter in his chest. "Emma, it's me," he whispered. She looked up. And that's when he froze. Her arms, they were covered in strange, fresh marks. Lines and bruises that told a story Samuel didn't want to hear. A story that made his stomach turn. How had this happened? Who could have hurt her? His mind raced. Flashbacks of prison, of being away, of the moments he couldn't protect her. They all hit him at once. Rachel's voice trembled behind him. "Samuel, it's not what you think." But Samuel couldn't hear her. All he could see were the marks, the pain in Emma's eyes, and a question that clawed at his soul. Why would anyone hurt my little girl? And then there was Hannah, Emma's best friend, who had been trying to protect her in ways Samuel couldn't even imagine. What had she witnessed? What secrets were buried in that house, hidden behind closed doors while he was locked away? Samuel took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He wanted to scream, to demand answers, to wipe away the hurt. But a part of him knew that the truth would be far more complicated and far more heartbreaking than he could imagine. What had happened to Emma while he was gone? Who had hurt her? And could Samuel ever make things right? Or had he missed the chance forever? This was the moment Samuel's life changed forever. And what he would discover next would shake him to his core. Before the world had shown its cruel edge, Samuel's life had a quiet rhythm. Every morning, he'd wake to the smell of coffee brewing in the small kitchen of their modest apartment. Emma, barely 8, would giggle as she tried to tie her own shoelaces, often failing in ways that made Samuel chuckle despite the heaviness of his past. Rachel, always busy with work, would pack Emma's lunch while exchanging warm, teasing banter with Samuel. A rare moment of normalcy that made the chaos of life feel a little lighter. Samuel had dreams beyond these walls. He had plans to start fresh, to build a life where his daughter could run freely without fear, where smiles weren't interrupted by whispers of judgment or suspicion. In the evenings, he and Emma would sit by the window, watching the sun dip behind the skyline, her little hand in his. And for a few minutes, everything felt safe. But even in these quiet moments, subtle shadows lurked. The neighbors who greeted Rachel politely, but never made eye contact with Samuel. The cautious glances from shopkeepers, their smiles forced, their eyes calculating. A simple trip to the grocery store could leave Samuel feeling exposed, judged for nothing more than the color of his skin. He shrugged these moments off, telling himself it was just small-town caution, harmless even. Emma, innocent as she was, had begun noticing too. "Daddy, why does Mrs. Harper never say hi to us?" she asked one evening, her small voice trembling with curiosity. Samuel had hugged her tight and whispered, "Some people don't understand, Pumpkin. It's not about you, it's about them." But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning, an undercurrent of prejudice that could not be ignored. The apartment, once filled with laughter and warmth, carried a quiet tension. A tension that even Samuel, despite his optimism, couldn't shake. He would glance out at the street as Emma played, noticing the subtle stares, the hushed conversations that stopped when he approached. It was as if the world he wanted for his daughter and himself already sensed he didn't belong. And soon, those small, fleeting glances of disapproval would become something far more sinister. Something that would shake their lives to the core, testing Samuel's courage and Emma's innocence in ways neither of them could imagine. Because in a world that promised safety and love within these four walls, the first cracks were forming, and when they widened, they would reveal a harsh truth. The world outside wasn't ready to accept them. From the very first week back in their neighborhood, Samuel and Emma began to feel the walls of normalcy closing in. It started with whispers, quiet, almost polite, yet sharp enough to cut. At the grocery store, a clerk would accidentally overlook Samuel while bagging Rachel's purchases. At the park, other children's parents would pull their kids away when Emma ran toward a swing next to Samuel. The stares weren't just casual. They carried a weight, a judgment Samuel couldn't shake. One afternoon, Samuel took Emma to the library, hoping the quiet would bring solace. Emma's eyes lit up at the rows of colorful books, her fingers brushing over spines as if touching hidden treasures. But the librarian's smile faltered the moment Samuel approached the counter. "Are you sure she's here with you legally?" the woman asked, a slight edge in her voice. Samuel froze, heart thudding. He opened his mouth, but no words could counter the invisible accusation. Emma's small hand gripped his tightly, sensing the tension, unaware of the world's cruelty, but absorbing its fear. Back at school, Emma faced a different kind of injustice. Her classmates whispered behind her back, mimicking her accent, her skin, the way she spoke. Teachers, though kind in tone, often dismissed Samuel's concerns, citing childhood misunderstandings or imagination. But Samuel knew better. He had lived enough to recognize the patterns. Every day, Emma returned home with small bruises of humiliation, notes passed in class, stares from strangers, playground taunts that left invisible scars on her young spirit. Samuel's own life became a battlefield. Job interviews ended with polite smiles and "we'll be in touch," though he never heard back. Landlords hesitated when he applied for apartments, their questions lingering too long on his background, on assumptions they never voiced aloud. Even old friends grew distant, excuses thin and polite yet cutting. Samuel felt the weight of invisible chains forming around him, a prison not made of bars, but of judgment and prejudice. One evening, Samuel sat on the porch with Emma, watching the streetlights flicker on. "Daddy, why do they look at us like that?" she asked softly. Her words pierced deeper than any insult hurled at him directly. He wanted to hold her close, to shield her from the world's cruelty. But the truth sat heavy in his chest. Some people, they don't understand Emma. They see differences and fear them. But that doesn't mean you're any less beautiful, any less strong. The tension escalated sharply one Friday afternoon. Emma's class was assigned a group project, and she was paired with Hannah, her best friend. At first it seemed ordinary, until Samuel received a call from the school. "Mr. Samuel, we need to discuss Emma's behavior," the principal said. Panic and disbelief collided in Samuel's chest. "Her behavior?" he asked. "She's only 8. What happened?" When he arrived, the classroom walls seemed to close in. Teachers avoided his eyes as they described incidents of Emma being difficult, combative, even disruptive. But the truth was far uglier. Other parents had complained because Emma had tried to help a classmate with a project, and her skin color had drawn whispered accusations of favoritism, of bringing the wrong influence into the classroom. Samuel's hands shook as he listened, anger and helplessness twisting together, and it didn't stop there. On the way home, a group of teenagers hurled insults from a passing car, slurs meant to wound both Samuel and Emma. Emma buried her face in his chest, silent tears falling while Samuel clenched his fists, wishing he could erase the world's cruelty with a snap of his fingers. That night, sleep came only fitfully, haunted by images of his daughter's hurt and the stark realization that the world outside would not welcome them. They had to fight for every inch of dignity. The following weeks brought more trials. Rachel faced discrimination at her workplace, subtly pushed out of opportunities. Hannah, Emma's closest friend, endured pressure from her parents to distance herself, to avoid trouble. Samuel felt cornered. Each day brought a new insult, a new barrier, a fresh humiliation, as if society itself conspired to remind them that they were outsiders in the very place they called home. Through it all, Samuel's determination hardened. He would not let the world break Emma's spirit. But as the harassment escalated, from school to public spaces, from whispers to outright hostility, the question loomed larger each day. How far would the injustice go? And at what cost to their family? Then came the day that changed everything. A day when private pain became public humiliation. A simple visit to the local park turned into a confrontation that would leave Samuel's heart racing and Emma questioning whether anyone could truly protect her. But what happened next would shock even those who thought they understood the cruelty of the world. Samuel had tried to prepare himself for the worst, but nothing could have readied him for the day that would change everything. It started as a normal morning, Emma excited to show him her drawing, Hannah skipping alongside them to the park. But as soon as they arrived, the air shifted. A group of older kids, teenagers, full of bravado and cruel intent, spotted Emma and immediately began taunting her. "Look who it is," one sneered, voice dripping with venom. "The little girl who thinks she belongs here." Emma froze, her small hands clutching Samuel's sleeve, eyes wide with fear. Hannah stepped in front of her, trying to shield her. Samuel's chest tightened. He wanted to rush forward, to yell, to fight, but he held himself back, trying to remain calm for Emma's sake. The insults escalated, their words sharp and pointed. "Go back to where you came from," one of them shouted. "People like you don't belong here." Samuel's fists curled, nails digging into his palms. He could feel his heart pounding, a storm of anger and helplessness building inside him. Emma tried to speak, her voice small but defiant. "Stop it, that's not true!" But the group laughed cruelly, circling them like predators. Samuel looked around. Other parents pretended not to notice. Other kids turned their heads. The isolation, the cold indifference of bystanders cut deeper than the words themselves. Then came the shove. One of the teenagers pushed Hannah roughly, and she stumbled into Emma. Samuel reacted instinctively, stepping between them. "Leave them alone," he shouted, voice shaking but commanding. But the group only jeered louder, emboldened by the lack of intervention. One of them grabbed Emma's drawing from her hand and tore it in half, letting the pieces flutter to the ground. Samuel felt something inside him snap, a combination of fear, rage, and love that refused to be silenced. He bent down, gathering the scraps of Emma's artwork, holding them close to his chest, as if they were more precious than life itself. "Do you hear me? I said leave them alone." His voice had an edge, a raw power that made even the bullies hesitate. One of the teenagers stepped forward, taller and menacing, clearly used to getting his way. "Or what?" he spat. "What are you going to do, huh? You're just one man." Samuel's eyes locked on his daughter. Emma's lips quivered, tears streaming down her face, but there was a flicker of courage in her gaze, something she had inherited from him, something that refused to be broken. And at that moment, Samuel realized this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her dignity, her safety, her future. Summoning every ounce of strength, Samuel squared his shoulders and faced the group head-on. "I don't care how many of you there are," he said, voice steady but booming. "You will not humiliate my daughter. Not today. Not ever." For a tense heartbeat, the world seemed to pause. The teenagers exchanged glances, unsure for the first time if their cruelty could withstand Samuel's unwavering determination. But just as it seemed the confrontation might end, a new horror appeared. A car slowly rolling up, windows down, blaring insults and slurs that made Samuel's stomach twist with anger. The intimidation had escalated beyond the park. It was now public, calculated, and designed to terrify. Emma buried her face in Samuel's chest, trembling. Samuel's jaw tightened. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, the injustice, the hatred, the societal rejection that had been building for months, years even. But he also felt something else, a burning courage, a fierce refusal to let fear control him, or to let the world break his daughter. He raised his voice, louder this time, cutting through the chaos.
Enough! You will not define who she is. You will not make her feel less than she is.
And if you think hate can intimidate us, you are wrong. Silence fell. The bullies faltered. The car sped off, its passengers muttering under their breath, leaving a trail of tension behind. Samuel held Emma tight, her small arms wrapping around him as if seeking to draw his strength into her own. Hannah clung to them both, eyes wide, tears streaking her cheeks. It was in that moment, amid the fear, the anger, the raw emotional intensity, that Samuel understood something fundamental. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was action despite fear. And for the first time in months, he felt a sense of power he hadn't known he possessed. A fierce, protective love that could withstand even the harshest cruelty of the outside world. Yet, even as relief washed over him, Samuel knew this battle was far from over. The park incident was only the beginning, a spark that could ignite both hope and further conflict. The scars of prejudice were not so easily erased, and the question lingered in the heavy, tense air. Would standing up today be enough to protect Emma tomorrow, or had they just made themselves a bigger target? As Samuel lifted Emma onto his shoulders and walked home, their hands tightly clasped, he looked ahead at the streets they would navigate together, the streets filled with judgment, ignorance, and hate. But he also looked into Emma's eyes and saw something unbreakable, a flicker of resilience that mirrored his own. The climax had come, raw and unflinching, leaving Samuel and Emma standing at the edge of a world that had tried to crush them, but they were still upright. And yet, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, a looming sense of uncertainty hung in the air, a question that demanded an answer in the next chapter of their lives. Could love, courage, and determination truly overcome the deep-rooted hatred surrounding them, or was the fight only beginning? The park incident had left Samuel and Emma shaken, but it also marked a turning point. In the days that followed, Samuel found that the world didn't immediately become safer, nor did prejudice disappear overnight. There were whispers in the supermarket aisles, sideways glances from neighbors, and the occasional cold shoulder from those who couldn't see past their own biases. But something within Samuel had shifted. He had faced the hatred head-on, and in doing so, he had found a resilience that would carry both him and Emma forward. Rachel, seeing Samuel's unwavering courage, grew stronger too. She realized that shielding Emma from the harsh realities of racism would not prepare her for the world. She had to equip her daughter with understanding, pride, and self-respect. Together, Samuel and Rachel began open conversations with Emma about the prejudice they faced. They explained that while the world could be cruel, they had the power to rise above hatred, to respond with dignity, and to protect their sense of self-worth. Emma, still young but remarkably perceptive, began to understand that courage didn't always mean fighting. It sometimes meant holding your head high when the world tried to knock you down, speaking out when others remained silent, and seeking allies who would stand beside you. Her friendship with Hannah became a source of light, a bond fortified through shared experiences of empathy and defiance against the unfairness that surrounded them. Together, the girls learned that unity was strength, that compassion could overcome fear, and that even the smallest voices could create ripples of change. Over time, Samuel took steps to reclaim their community, not with anger or revenge, but with purpose. He organized neighborhood gatherings, inviting families to share stories, music, and food, creating spaces where children could play without judgment. Slowly, some walls began to crumble. Parents who had once avoided Emma and Hannah saw the resilience and intelligence of the children they had underestimated. Some apologized quietly, acknowledging their biases in ways small but significant. Others remained distant, but Samuel realized that changing the world wasn't about winning every heart. It was about ensuring safety, respect, and opportunity for his daughter. At school, the administration eventually took notice. Samuel, using his voice with courage and persistence, met with teachers and parents to advocate for anti-bullying programs and inclusivity training. Emma's experiences, once dismissed as childhood misunderstandings, became the catalyst for meaningful change. Policies were revised, awareness programs were implemented, While the pain Emma endured could not be erased, her struggles had sparked action that would protect countless other children in the future. Yet life was not without ongoing challenges. There were still stares, subtle discrimination, and occasional acts of hostility. Samuel understood that prejudice, deeply ingrained in society, could not vanish overnight. But he also understood something more powerful. Love, courage, and unwavering commitment could shield those who mattered most and inspire change in unexpected ways. The long-term impact of those turbulent months rippled through their family. Samuel and Rachel grew closer, their partnership strengthened by shared purpose. Emma, now more confident and self-aware, began to flourish academically, socially, and emotionally. She learned to navigate the world with a sense of pride in her identity, understanding that her worth was never determined by the ignorance of others. Samuel himself became a quiet pillar of his community. Neighbors who once avoided him sought his advice, inspired by the dignity with which he confronted adversity. He spoke at local events about courage, about standing up against injustice, and about the importance of nurturing empathy in children. Every word he shared carried the weight of experience, the authenticity of someone who had faced hatred, yet refused to let it define him or his daughter. The moral of their story became evident in ways both subtle and profound. Racism had tried to isolate them, to instill fear, and to create division. Prejudice had attempted to erode their confidence and separate families from their communities. Yet Samuel and Emma had demonstrated the opposite. Unity could heal wounds, courage could confront hatred, and love could shield even the youngest from despair. The world would not always be fair, but the choices they made, standing firm, advocating for justice, protecting innocence, had consequences that extended far beyond their own lives. One evening, as Samuel watched Emma and Hannah laughing in the yard, their hands entwined as they chased shadows across the grass, he felt a deep sense of quiet triumph. They had survived the storm, not unscathed, but stronger, wiser, and unbroken. He realized that victory was not measured by the absence of struggle, but by the strength to endure, to protect, and to teach the next generation to do the same. Emma looked up at him, eyes bright, and whispered, "Daddy." "We did it, didn't we?" Samuel smiled, pulling her close. "Yes, Pumpkin, we did. And remember, you're never alone. Courage and love will always guide you, no matter what the world throws at us." The story of Samuel, Emma, Rachel, and Hannah was more than just a tale of hardship. It was a testament to resilience. It was proof that while racism could wound, it could also be challenged. While prejudice could isolate, community and understanding could bridge gaps. And while hatred could threaten, courage, unity, and love had the power to heal, protect, and transform. In the end, the scars remained, but they were no longer symbols of defeat. They were reminders of survival, strength, and the enduring lesson that hate can never conquer those who refuse to be broken. Samuel had learned, Emma had learned, and their community had begun to learn too. Courage defeats hate, love heals wounds, and unity builds a future stronger than fear. And as the sun set on their neighborhood, casting warm golden light over the streets they called home, Samuel knew that their journey was far from over, but they would face it together, unafraid, unbroken, and unstoppable.